There we are. Make sure everything is rolling. Okay, I think we're good. I just want to make sure everything works. All right, here we go.
Rouge the Bat, everyone's favorite double-cross spy thief that succeeds. Sometimes she's gathering crucial intel to help her side win, other times she just kind of follows Shadow, and other times she's barely even a background character. Today, we're going to look at Rouge's role in every Sonic game she makes an appearance in, and rank her from worthless to elite. Her debut was in Sonic Adventure 2, and it's debatably her most prominent role to date. Every main character in the game needed a gameplay equivalent for the other side of the story. Sonic got his new anti-hero Shadow, they put Tails in a mech to be Eggman's, and Rouge was created to rival Knuckles. We don't know much about her at the start of this game.
Hey Nico, how you doing?
But she apparently loves big shiny things and tries to take the Master Emerald from Knuckles. The two bicker over it for a bit, and Eggman swoops in and just fucking yoinks it on him. So Knuckles does the only logical thing and smashes it into a bunch of pieces he now has to go look for. Rouge obviously goes hunting for him too, so cue some mid-treasure hunting levels, her infiltrating Eggman's base, and revealing to the player that she works for a third party. The government? I don't know, I guess they contracted her to learn more about the ultimate life form in exchange for more shiny stuff. She makes it up to the space colony and strikes up a deal with Eggman and Shadow that allows her to borrow a radar to find the Master Emerald pieces in exchange for helping them get all the Chaos Emeralds. The three go to Prison Island, Rouge collects a few Chaos Emeralds, then gets stuck in a storage vault after it gets sealed and the island's already set to explode. Luckily though, Shadow goes back and rescues her with Chaos Control at the very last second. Getting herself into that situation and needing the help of another character to prevent death is a pretty bad look, and it's not even the only time this happens. Later on, when her and Knuckles flirt some more in space, she falls to her impending doom in a pit of lava, and Knuckles catches her just in time for the save. Seeing her actually get herself killed twice really paints her in a bad light, but she does make a little comeback in the endgame. After Shadow exposes her identity as a government spy, he thwarts her plan of stealing all the Chaos Emeralds from the cannon and allows Eggman to fully power up the Eclipse Cannon. This, of course, doesn't go as planned for him. It sends the space colony on a collision course with Earth, and Shadow's super happy about it, but Eggman had no idea. So everybody minus Shadow puts their heads together to figure out a way to save the day. And of all the literal geniuses in the room, Rouge is the one that figures out what to do. They gotta use the Master Emerald's power to offset that of all the Chaos Emeralds. So they beat a quick level, get to the cannon's core, and then the Bio Lizard takes over the arc and makes Sonic and Shadow go super to stop it. In a dire situation, she comes in clutch with a clever plan, and is overall a really impactful character throughout the story. Being able to play as her just like the rest of the main cast is huge, but the two-man base, where she finds Shadow being held captive. She opens up the capsule and wakes him up, but it also inadvertently activates...
Hey Jackson, what's up buddy?
E123 Omega, who opens fire on the room. Him and Shadow got beef, but Rouge breaks up the fight and convinces them to team up and search for Eggman. I guess that kind of makes her the team leader, but Shadow's more marketed as the captain. The gameplay involves switching between the trio to navigate the stage efficiently. Shadow's the speedster, E123's the powerhouse, and Rouge is the flight archetype, which is kind of the best one in my opinion. They all move pretty quickly and can attack enemies, but only she can fly. At the end of the dark story, she finds Eggman's treasure she was looking for, a room full of Shadow clones. So, no jewels? For the final boss, though, she joins the rest of the cast to fend off against Metal Madness, and is a pretty equal contributor. It's not a crazy role for her, but she does rescue Shadow and form the team. Also, she doesn't get herself killed this time, so I'm comfortable putting her up in Elite. Rouge is a pretty prominent character in Sonic Battle, about as much as she could be. She's a playable character that's considered a mid to high tier fighter, and she's also got her very own story mode. In it, she's not doing much. She wants to train Emerald to be the ultimate jewel thief, so she teaches him a little bit through battle, they rob a jewelry store together, and she gets fed up with all the attention he's getting and removes herself from the situation. Oh, she also calls Sonic Daddy for some reason? Fast forward to Shadow's story, where she plays a much more impactful role. At first, the two of
What have I been doing? Not much, buddy. I've just been watching some YouTube. I've been having dinner, and then as soon as it hit 8 o'clock, here I am, getting my final live stream of the day done.
fight a security robot, and Shadow gets incapacitated, so she drags him all the way back to her casino that she now owns? I don't know. But more plot unfolds, and they realize Emerald is gonna inevitably become a weapon that wipes out the planet. And it's once again Rouge who figures out how to stop the world-ending threat. So she walks Shadow through how he needs to do it. Without her, it's very likely Emerald would have gone rogue. And that with being a fully playable character in the game with her own mode on top of it all, we've got another very easy Elite on our hands. In Shadow the Hedgehog, Rouge appears as an ally in 3 levels, and she's helping Gun and the good guys. Now, this game is really confusing with all the different endings and whatnot, so her actual contribution on things is a little bit gray. But the last story is the definitive ending, and she's right there with everybody as Shadow confronts Black Doom. Problem is, Doom releases some kind of gas that paralyzes everyone but Shadow, so she has to just sit there and watch Shadow kick ass. He's the only character that's anything above average, and she really has no say in the fate of the world, but she still does all she can to fight off against Black Doom, and that's enough to keep her out of Worthless. Barely does anything.
Oh, I hate these ads, bruh.
Sonic Riders is a super underrated racing game. It's got a really fun concept, unique mechanics, and carries over Sonic's main series level design philosophy of different routes for different character archetypes, and I freaking love it. But Rouge, she's an unlockable character, her own special board, and that's basically it. No role in the story, not that there's much of one in this game, but still, in a game like this, being included as a playable character warrants at least a mid-tier. And same thing for Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. Sonic 06 features 3 perspectives of the story, and Shadows heavily involves Rouge. It opens with the 2 of them getting their hands on the Scepter of Darkness, but after Eggman confronts them and tries to steal it back, he whacks her mid-air and causes her to drop it. And Shadow, being the beacon of chivalry he is, catches her and lets the scepter hit the ground. This scares the shit out of Eggman, and for good reason, because it frees Mephiles the Dark, a purely evil and all-powerful character that effortlessly sends Rouge and Shadow to a decimated future they seemingly can't return from. There, they find Sonic and Co. met the same fate and team up to get back to the present. Rouge, being an expert treasure hunter, finds a Chaos Emerald well before even Emerald Boy can, and they all escape to the present, but Shadow stays back to fight Mephiles. So Rouge sends help to the future by giving her Chaos Emerald to E123 Omega to hold on to until Shadow needs it. Shadow was kinda cooked in this fight with Mephiles, so Rouge basically saved him. And in the last story, where, spoilers, Sonic's dead, everyone splits up to find a Chaos Emerald to try and save him. And of course, Rouge's abilities lend themselves quite well to that. She's also a playable character throughout Shadow's story, and while she only has 1 level that's all her, she's a secondary character in a few of Shadow's, so that definitely helps her case. While she is the one responsible for releasing Mephiles, he probably would have gotten out at some point anyway, and saving Shadow, who went on to be necessary to beating Solaris in the end, played a crucial role. I think Pretty Capable is a very respectable spot to place her.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, Jackson, we'll make a video together one day. It's just I gotta get all these streams done first, and then we'll start doing that. But anyway, as I was about to say, once the Switch stops being supported, like on March 2025, I will probably try to buy some Xbox 360 games. And even though the Xbox series like has stopped being supported and all that stuff now, I still have an Xbox 360, so the thing is like the thing is that what was it? The only console I have left besides this Nintendo Switch is an old Switch that fan keeps, buzzing and humming and all that stuff. The one that I would go and try to shake it to get it to stop. So other than that thing that doesn't work anymore, I only have an Xbox 360. That's the only console I have left. I don't have any other consoles. So when this Switch is done, as well as the old Switch is done, all I'm going to have to be able to play for y'all is going to be an Xbox 360, because the Nintendo Wii has stopped being supported, and I can't even find my Nintendo Wii remote and Wii nunchucks, as well as trying to get a channel for my Wii. So that's out of the question because that stopped being supported. So the only console I have left, because the Wii, it won't work anymore. The old Switch has been alive for 5 years and is basically done. And the new Switch is going to last until March 2025. So the only console I have left for this career is going to be the Xbox 360. Once that's done, I'm going to have to get a new console so y'all can be entertained by by games for that, whatever console's I'm going to get. So you're going to get a lot of Switch content mostly. I will try to do Xbox 360 content, even if it means glitchy, buggy Sonic 06. And whatever Xbox 360 games. So, yeah. Without wasting any more time, let's continue already.
Sonic Rivals puts Rouge into a pretty minor role. She apparently gets trapped in a playing card after learning one of Eggman's secrets and is basically a damsel in distress for the first time. And to make it worse, she's not even a playable character in the racing game, so it's an undeniable worthless. She plays a much bigger role in the second Sonic Rivals, where she has her own story mode and travels alongside Knuckles. They work together to find the Master Emerald and all the Chaos Emeralds, and they kinda succeed. She steals Eggman's Emerald Detector and ends up finding 6 Chaos Emeralds, which triggers this portal to another dimension to open up, and Knuckles drags her in with him. The portal ends up splitting them up, and Rouge finds Knuckles. He's being controlled by a big fire monster called the Ifrit. So she has to fight this world ender lava bird and the great warrior Knuckles all by herself, and she absolutely crushes it. That's more than we've ever really seen from her, so it's gotta go. Also, after saving Knuckles, they find out the Master Emerald was inside that detector they had the entire time, and she distracts Knuckles with Riz to steal it from right under his nose. Double elite. I'm gonna group the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games together because they're more or less the same game. She's not in the 2008 original, but she is in everyone after that, and they don't have a big story mode or anything, so a decent playable inclusion earns her a spot in playable but average.
A hearty, hefty breakfast. And when you finish, you know you had some to...
Yes, I'm finally including an RPG game. Look at me. Rouge is the 4th person to join Sonic's team and was apparently sent to do so by the gun commander in the hopes of gathering some Nocturnus technology. You can choose to help her, or not, it doesn't really matter, and in-game, she can fly in the overworld as well as sneak up on enemies, and in battle, she's got a low attack power and armor, but attacks twice per round and can fittingly steal items from enemies. That sounds like a good trade-off to me, but every tier list I've seen has her placed at the absolute bottom of the totem pole. So I don't want to put her very high, I'll go barely does anything. I'm giving this Sonic Riders game its own entry because she's actually involved in the story, but it honestly doesn't change much. She enters the World Grand Prix in the hopes of winning the large cash prize, but at the end, the winner is undetermined and kinda overshadowed by the earth-shattering revelation that King Doc was Dr. Eggman in disguise this whole time. Who could have seen that coming? Slightly less obvious, though, was that the robot on Team Dark was actually Metal Sonic in disguise, and regular Sonic challenges him to a race and defeats him no problem. After that, Eggman's long gone, and they come to terms with the fact that there was never any treasure or prize in the first place. Well, Rouge claims to have seen it coming, but still actively participated all along, so that makes me think otherwise. Still, she's playable and just as useful as everybody else, so another average tier. She's not in the home console version of Sonic Colors, but in the DS version, which is an entirely different game, she appears during an extra mission in Starlight Carnival, where she tricked Knuckles into meeting her there for no good reason. She doesn't get the Master Emerald or anything, but she did forge a letter from Eggman to bait Knuckles into showing up, so she's basically just a troll. Makes Knuckles look stupid, but for her, it's still a worthless. She plays a very minor role in Sonic Generations. She's at Sonic's birthday party chopping it up with Knuckles, but the Time Eater shows up, traps her in the void, and the Sonics have to go save her. Once restored, she participates in some missions where she can help a little bit, but those aren't mandatory to progression, so they won't help her escape another worthless. Most of Rouge's early contributions are seen through episode Shadow, where she's giving him intel on the state of Eggman's army and the Resistance. She eventually teams up with the latter once Sonic is freed and him and Shadow reunite, and from there, she continues to investigate the situation and provides further information and strategy. It all culminates in the battle scene at the end of the game, where Rouge is right there with the rest of the Resistance on the front lines. She's not playable, which makes it feel weird putting her higher than that, but she really helps to guide the Resistance and makes a stand with everyone else at the end, so pretty capable is fitting. This racing game has a pretty solid story mode, and it doesn't feature Eggman hosting the Grand Prix. Instead, it's Dadan Pa, who's not working with Eggman. Rumors went around that he was, but those were started by, you guessed it, Rouge, who was snooping around and got the wrong idea. Later on, though, she finds out he's the president of an automotive corporation and was just using the Grand Prix to improve his, quote, ultimate energy engine. It's even more apparent they're not working together when Eggman kidnaps him to use said engine to power the Death Egg. The heroes, race the Death Egg, and when it loses, it goes haywire and destructs. They all escape with Dadan Pa and get new cars to keep on racing. So she spreads misinformation, eventually clears it up, and is otherwise just another playable character. I know where this one's going. In this game, Rouge makes an appearance in the story, but doesn't play a very significant role. She shows up to Amy's birthday party, tries stealing some stuff and pisses off Knuckles, but despite being notorious for investigating and solving problems, she doesn't really play a pivotal role in solving this mystery. She's more of a fun distraction, that honestly
I like that version of Rouge. She looks cute.
barely does anything. This is the only Sonic mobile game I'll be covering. There's a bunch of others she appears in, like Sonic Forces Speed Battle and Sonic Jump, but I don't know much about any of them, and I've only seen people asking me to include Dream Team. Here, she's a playable character alongside Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and who else?
Yeah, I love... Okay,
Speed Battle,
they did a good job with her.
Sonic Jump, but I don't know
And actually, I'm talking about Amy.
about any of them, and I've only seen people asking me to include Dream Team. Here, she's a playable character alongside Sonic,
Look at how cute my girlfriend is. And yes, I'm sorry, boys, but Amy's mine. You guys can have Blaze, Rouge if you want, or anyone else, but I'm sorry, but Modern Amy is mine.
Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and who else?
She's the only one that's off limits.
But f***ing Cream. At the beginning of the game,
Yeah, I like Cream too, but mostly Amy. She's mine.
she's the one that finds out where Cream's getting held captive and takes the rest of the heroes there to go save her. Once they enter the dream world, it's just Sonic, and the last two characters to get saved are Knuckles and Rouge, which should be a bad thing, but that was completely out of their control, and she's still the reason they found Cream in the first place. Being fully playable in a 3D Sonic game for the first time in over a decade is a big deal, and I'm willing to bump her up to a pretty capable for it. And last but certainly not least, we have Sonic X Shadow Generations, where the Sonic Generations side features mostly the same thing as before, but the Shadow side gives us a whole new look at her role throughout the story. At Sonic's party at the beginning, she's talking with Shadow about what's happening on the Ark, where he gives her a quick rundown and hangs up. And that's about it until way later in the game. After Sonic beats Shadow in their final rematch, he gives up the Chaos Emerald he found, and Rouge shows up to berate Shadow for losing it, only to find out he gave Sonic the fake one from the end of SA2, which was a sick callback. He asked Rouge to switch out the one he gave Sonic with the real deal once he's done with his mission, and as promised, once the time comes, he gives it to her and she delivers. We don't see her do it, but since Sonic was able to go super, she clearly did. So while she was worthless in the original generations, making sure they could defeat the Time Eater in the end makes me have to put her a little higher. And there you have it. Do you guys prefer this method of...
Alright, so now that that's the end of that, we're gonna do a full... We're also gonna do the recaps. Of course.
Dr. Ivo Robotnik, everyone's favorite mustachioed, egg-shaped mad scientist. Sometimes he's an evil genius that works...
You can't be serious.
Super elaborate and diabolical...
Hold on, let's try that again.
Dr. Ivo Robotnik, everyone's favorite mustachioed, egg-shaped mad scientist. Sometimes he's an evil genius that works up these super elaborate and diabolical schemes, and other times he's kind of a helpless goofball. Today, we're going to look at Eggman's character in every mainline Sonic game and rank him from worthless to elite. In the OG Sonic the Hedgehog, Eggman's after the 6 Chaos Emeralds and sends an army of robots controlled by little animals to stop Sonic from getting in his way. He shows up at the end of each stage as a boss and brings some pretty painful contraptions with him. It's a classic Dr. Eggman role, and belongs in typical bad guy tier. Sonic 2 raises the stakes compared to the first game, now adding a 7th Chaos Emerald, having better boss fights, and worlds that feel more polluted and mechanized. But none are more impactful additions than Eggman constructing his very own world-destroying satellite, the Death Egg. This makes his plan a hell of a lot more menacing, and while it makes a return plenty of times in the series, its introduction gets bonus points. The only thing holding this one back is the final fight against Eggman. Now, the first phase of the boss versus this robot Sonic dude is decent. It's always cool to fight an evil version of your character, but battling the Death Egg Robo is kinda jank. His attack patterns are very predictable, and if you try to land hits where his arms are moving, even if they should be out of the way, they'll probably kill you. The key is patiently waiting for the few situations where he's completely vulnerable, because you don't get any rings, and one hit will take you out. It's a disappointing final fight, but Robotnik outrunning Sonic to the mech is even more bonus points, and lands him a spot in pretty menacing. In this game, Eggman's not after these 7 shiny collectibles, but rather these, the Time Stones, which he plans on creating a hellish dystopian future with, and it actually works. We see a ton of stages and environments get morphed by his actions, which feel very different from the natural and lively ones of the present and past. And beating the game doesn't always save the day either. Sonic may defeat Eggman as the final boss, but if he doesn't get all 7 Time Stones, he gets the bad ending, where Eggman still wins. I like those odds for him. This game's also the introduction of Metal Sonic, who was created by Eggman as a machine whose abilities could rival that of Sonic. and he's a thorn in our ass the entire way through, which helps make this a pretty easy elite for the Doctor. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Eggman tries to rebuild the Death Egg using the power of the Master Emerald, which is heavily guarded on Angel Island. So to kill two birds with one stone, he becomes allies with the Protector, Knuckles, and tells him that Sonic's trying to steal the Emerald and use its power for evil. Eggman shows up for a lot of boss fights, but Knuckles is doing most of the dirty work, so he doesn't have to do as much himself. Later on, he betrays Knuckles and restores the Death Egg, which sets him up pretty well for world domination, but stabbing Knuckles in the back is kinda what screwed him over, because Knuckles then helps Sonic and Tails reach Sky Sanctuary and eventually infiltrate the Death Egg. He was definitely prepared for it though, because this final boss is without a doubt the hardest of the classic Sonic games. And then the second phase incorporates Super Sonic, and Eggman just never stood a chance. Everything considered, I think he fits well in Pretty Menacing. He has a weapon of mass destruction, manipulates a very powerful character, and puts up a good fight. It also features him outrunning Sonic once again, so... In Sonic 3D Blast, the stakes are much lower. He's looking for Chaos Emeralds and has the Flickies help him find them. If Sonic gets all the emeralds first, the animals are saved.
You know me. I may react to a new ranking how useless every Sonic character is in every Sonic game, you know, like Rouge or Sonic or something. But I always do the recaps. You should know this by now, every single time I react to one of these.
If not, Eggman escapes with the emeralds. There's no fate of the world at stake, and it seems like typical Eggman hijinks. Sonic Adventure is the first of many games to showcase Eggman's fascination with ancient monsters. This time, it's Chaos. He goes around collecting the Chaos Emeralds again, and feeds them to Chaos so he gets stronger and hopefully helps him take over the world and fight off Sonic. That being the case, you don't fight him nearly as much as the classic games, but he still has his way for most of the story, tricking Knuckles again and collecting all 7 emeralds for his new buddy to evolve into Perfect Chaos, only for him to demolish the egg carrier and smack Eggman away like a fly. And to make matters worse, after Sonic defeats him and he reverts to Plan B, blowing up Station Square via missile, Tails is able to stop him without Sonic's help, which is great for him, but a pretty bad look for Eggman. He still has his moments though, Pretty Menacing. This one's an interesting case, because on one hand, he achieves exactly what he set out to, but on the other, he was ill-informed and things almost went a whole lot worse. He learns about a secret weapon from his grandfather's journals, breaks into a high-security government base, and releases Shadow, the ultimate life form, who promises to help him rule the world if he brings in more Chaos Emeralds.
I'm going to assume you mean the Chaos Emeralds.
He does, and Eggman broadcasts a worldwide message threatening to destroy Earth if he's not accepted as the supreme ruler, and blows up half the moon to flex his power. When Sonic gets aboard the Ark and confronts him, Eggman captures him in a pod, tricks Tails into revealing that the emerald they brought was a decoy, and launches Sonic away in a capsule rigged with explosives. Now, if Sonic wasn't able to pull Chaos Control out of his ass with a fake emerald, Eggman would have killed him and won. But that's not how things worked out, and it gets worse for him, because after placing the last emerald on the Eclipse Cannon, it sets it on a collision course with Earth. So instead of being able to hold the destruction over everyone's head, the planet's getting destroyed. So to stop that, Eggman teams up with the rest of the characters to shut it down. Shadow, however, knew that was going to happen all along, and used Eggman's desire for world domination to his advantage. So for as bad as I want to put this in Elite, especially because this is one of his very few playable rules, I gotta lower it to Pretty Menacing. I'm grouping the Advanced Trilogy together again because I've done it for all the other characters, and his attempts are mostly the same. In the first 2, he's trying to take over the world, and in the 3rd, he splits the world into pieces by accident, but is still trying to take him over. The plans aren't all that special or unique, so he's a pretty typical bad guy. This one opens with Team Sonic receiving a letter from Eggman telling him that he's up to no good again. All 4 teams are in one way or another chasing down Eggman throughout the game, but Team Chaotic's story ends with them rescuing their mysterious client, who just so happens to be Dr. Eggman? Yeah, apparently the Eggman figure we've been seeing was actually Metal Sonic in disguise, who wanted to conquer the planet and prove he's the superior Sonic. But this ain't about him. Eggman is a helpless kidnappee, and even after being saved, refuses to pay the Chaotix their promised wage, making this a very easy worthless. Shadow's the main playable character in this one, and the way the plot unfolds is dependent on who he listens to. He can help Gunn and the Heroes, Black Doom, or Dr. Eggman, and his importance relies solely on whether or not Shadow decides to help him. But in the game's definitive ending, Eggman doesn't do anything but tell Shadow that he's not one of the many Shadow androids, which barely does anything. I don't have that tier this time, so kinda dumb. In Sonic Rush, Eggman teams up with a version of himself from another dimension, and together they try to collect the 14 Chaos and Soul Emeralds. Grabbing an Eggman from another dimension was a good idea, and one they'll surely not go back to again. But if there were two of them and they still couldn't outsmart Sonic, he's gotta be kinda stupid. In this game, he focuses his efforts on releasing another elemental monster, Iblis. This plot is super confusing and all over the place. At first he thinks he's Bowser and keeps kidnapping the princess, then he accidentally releases Mephiles. But his main goal of controlling the all-powerful Solaris bites him in the ass once again when it takes over the past, present, and future, and couldn't give less of a fuck about the Doctor. And in the most pivotal moment of the game, he's standing in the background helplessly with the rest of Sonic's pals. So kinda dumb fits him well. In Sonic Rush Adventure, the two Eggmen, team up and try to steal the Jeweled Scepter to control the waters and wind, take over Blaze's dimension, and build Eggman Land. They don't get far, and like I said for the first game, two of them, one mediocre plan. Just like Adventure 2, this is a really tough one to gauge. It opens with the most beautiful cinematic we've seen in a Sonic game to date, with Sonic and Eggman battling it out in space, and Eggman winning. He catches Super Sonic, drains all the power from the Chaos Emeralds and Sonic, and uses it to shatter the Earth into bits and release Dark Gaia, the third elemental giant f***ing monster. Now all we need is air. This leaves Sonic looking like that, and Eggman in prime position to take over the world. Where last time he wanted to build Eggman Land, this time he completes Eggman Land. And it's one of the most grueling and challenging levels in Sonic's history, making it well live up to the name. And the boss fight to follow it up versus the Egg Dragoon is equally incredible. Everything thus far is peak Eggman, but that only makes his downfall all the more glorious. When Dark Gaia reaches its full power, Eggman commands it to destroy Sonic once and for all. Yeah, just like in a lot of these games, Eggman accomplishes what he sets out to, but loses control over the situation faster than, well, Sonic. And this one's no exception. But constructing Eggman Land was such an accomplishment, and smashing the Earth into pieces has to earn him a decent spot. So I'm still gonna give him the lead.
10,000 years.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, aka Eggman in Sonic 4 Episode 1. He brings back past enemies and bosses, tries to make them better, and sends them at Sonic for round 2. Not his best work. Typical bad guy. Eggman's plan in Sonic Colors is unique. He builds an amusement park in space to hide the fact that he's exploiting alien races. And it kinda works until it doesn't. Sonic thinks he's up to something and realizes that, yep, he's enslaving wisps and trying to power another cannon aimed at Earth. It sounds really serious, but the more lighthearted tone of this one makes me see him as a lot less threatening. And for that, I'm keeping it in typical bad guy. Generations has modern Eggman teaming up with classic Eggman, and their combined brains and force still can't stop that puny hedgehog. At least the giant monster he's working with doesn't betray him, but still, if two of them couldn't do it, he's going below typical. This one, again, has Eggman bringing back old ideas. He revives Metal Sonic and rebuilds the Death Egg, now called the Mark II version. Yeah, same different day. Typical. Sonic Lost World has Eggman controlling a new group of hostile creatures, the Zeti. He controls them with this conch thing, and since Sonic's a silly Billy, he smashes it to bits and causes the Zeti to turn on all of them. They take over Eggman's environment-sucking machine and want to destroy the world, not just threaten with it. So Sonic, Tails, and Eggman team up to stop him, but Eggman betrays them at the end and uses the power for his latest mech, which is destroyed like every other Sonic boss. I like that they went a new direction with this, but the writing is god-awful, and I don't think Eggman had that situation under control at all. Also, this big robot being his ultimate weapon felt derivative as hell, and looks no different than any other robot he's tried to kill Sonic with. I'd go typical, but the amount of unnecessary bullshit he went through for it makes me lean more toward the kinda dumb side. Eggman's not really the main villain in this game. He tries to be, and he even brings Metal Sonic back to help, but Lyric is the real bad guy here. He can take over any of Eggman's robots with the click of a button, and can honestly kill him whenever he wants. He tries so hard to prove that he's better than him throughout the game, but makes more and more of an ass of himself each time, until the very end of the game, where Lyric has Sonic and his friends all tied up and ready to be killed, and Eggman surprise attacks them and kills him because he was jealous of his strength. This dude was gonna take down your arch enemies. Why didn't you just take him out after? He's an idiot.
No!
Despite this being a breath of fresh air for the Sonic series, Eggman's plan is pretty darn rudimentary. He finds some powerful jewel called the Phantom Ruby and uses it to send Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles back to older levels, where they chase down him and the hard-boiled heavies to make sure they aren't cooking up any evil schemes. But he still eventually takes over Little Planet, they beat him up, and it explodes. Typical bad guy shenanigans. I hate Sonic Forces. I will say that at the beginning of every segment. But this is one of Eggman's more successful attempts at world domination, mainly because he does take over the world. His new ally, Infinite, absolutely demolishes Sonic, and they lock him up in the Death Egg, which, yes, is back. The world then quickly falls into Eggman's clutches, and he does what he's always wanted with it. Creates a global dystopian regime with his robo-troops watching over. And throughout the entire game, this is felt through the environments you run through. It's actually one of the better things this game does. Eggman really thought this plan through. Even after Sonic's broken out, he's got troops on him 24/7. When they destroy the Phantom Ruby's power supply, he has a backup. Then he sends a f***ing sun at the Resistance to wipe him out. And even after that, has a pretty intimidating mech in place to stomp the Resistance. Even though he does lose in the end, the fact that he actually won for a while and the sheer amount of backup plans he put in place make this a pretty hard one to argue with. Elite. This one's another case of Eggman trying to harness some ancient power. It doesn't work, and he gets locked up in this digital cyberspace for a while, relying on his AI creation Sage to help him out. He locks up all of Sonic's friends and tries to pester him along the way, but in the end, needs Sonic's help to destroy another entity he didn't know the full power of, so he kinda dumb. And last but certainly not least, we have Sonic Superstars, where he plays a pretty traditional Eggman role.
Yeah, about that game. I'm still trying to beat the final boss before I make a live stream on it. So far, I made it through like maybe half of the second phase. I made it to the second phase, and I think I made it like through half. I beat the first phase. I'm at halfway through the second phase. So that live stream is coming soon, but I think I died at least 3 times or so. So I'm taking a break from Sonic Superstars.
Instead of the usual Death Egg, we get the Egg Fortress. He kidnaps animals, but this time some of them are big. This is pretty standard. And there you have it. Real quick, if you...
Alright, so that's the end of that. Let's see, the next one. Pow.
I like you.
Shadow the Hedgehog, everyone's favorite edgy, sailor-mouthed ultimate life form. Sometimes he's a stronger, cooler version of Sonic, and other times he's just an asshole that doesn't help at all. Today, we're going to look at Shadow's character in every mainline Sonic game and rank him from worthless to elite. His first appearance is obviously in Sonic Adventure 2, so starting with that game, he's pretty freaking elite. Now, he's not crazy helpful to the heroes until the very end of the final chapter of the game, but throughout the story, he was the main driving force behind pretty much everything, and is the only character to have ever really outsmarted Dr. Eggman. When he frees him at the beginning of the game, he uses Eggman's desire to take over the world to persuade him to power up the Eclipse Cannon, which would give the people of Mobius Earth no choice but to accept Dr. Eggman as their supreme ruler. But using all 7 emeralds on the cannon puts it on a collision course with Earth, which Eggman had no idea about, and Shadow was secretly planning this whole time. It's not until the absolute last second that he realizes Maria wanted him to protect the people of Earth, causing him to rush down and catch up with Sonic and Knuckles, defeat the Bio-Lizard, and use the 7 emeralds to go super alongside Sonic and stop the Eclipse Cannon. Throughout the entire game, Shadow basically has full control over everything that happens. His plan works exactly as predicted, and when he has a change of heart, he's the reason they were able to save the day. And he even sacrifices himself to the cause. Also, his gameplay is awesome. He plays just like Sonic, and Adventure 2 is home to some of my favorite levels in the series. This is peak Shadow. Sonic Heroes once again makes Shadow playable, but he's not nearly as relevant as he was last time. The game opens with Rouge freeing him from a pod in Eggman's base, and throughout the game, he leads Team Dark as the speed character, which is kind of the least useful of the trio. And then there's this whole confusing plot point where he has amnesia, and there's all these other Shadows in pods, so it's like, maybe our Shadow isn't the real one, or maybe they're all fakes and he's actually dead. And there's no clear explanation or answers given, so he could be completely worthless, we don't know. Still though, the Shadow character is playable and pretty useful, so he gets sidekicked here. I'm going to include Sonic Battle this time around because 1, Shadow's not in as many games, and 2, so this dude can stop harassing me about it. Sonic Battle makes Shadow playable and gives him his own episode in the story, where he's pretty freaking useful. Rouge has to save him from Eggman's base early in the story, just like last time, but after that, he makes it his mission to stop Emerald from getting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, because like him, Emerald was created to be a weapon, and when he gains ultimate power, he believes it'll be the downfall of the planet. So he tries to kill him, it doesn't work, and the two kind of bond over being created for destruction, but having a good soul deep down. And that's apparently because Gerald Robotnik just copy-pasted Maria's soul into both of them? I don't know, it's weird, but him and Rouge are the ones that figure out how to make Emerald perfectly safe, by activating his full power and saying the phrase, "Bring hope to humanity." Shadow says that it removes Eggman's control over him and gets rid of all his violent programming, so he's responsible for the most pivotal moment for this game's main character. And if you're looking purely at the fighting gameplay and which characters are considered higher tier, you'll find Shadow near the top of just about every list. I'm not going to act like I know what the competitive scene for this game looks like. I've only played a couple matches of it very casually, but being considered one of the better characters and contributing a lot to the story makes this one a solidified elite tier. This one's literally named after him. Elite! He's the main playable character throughout the entire game, and his decisions directly impact the fate of the world. This game's notorious for having all these different story paths and endings that do make it a complicated playthrough, but also really illustrate how much control Shadow has over the events of the game. He can choose to help Sonic and Co. fight alongside Gun and see their side win, or he can help Black Doom and ultimately destroy the planet. He's the key to either side winning, so if there was a tier higher than Elite, he'd go there. In Sonic 06, Shadow gets his own story mode like Sonic and Silver. His gameplay still maintains the fast pace of Sonic's, but it has a lot more focus on combat and enemies with health bars, which don't take more than a couple extra homing attacks to kill, but do bog down levels a bit. And the vehicle sections are god-awful, but still, overall his levels are around as fun as Sonic's. Baroque and all the same, but can be enjoyable. But his role in the story is even more prominent. He's the reason Mephiles gets released, but he's also the one that sealed him away 10 years ago, so those kind of cancel out. And like Amy, he saves Sonic from another Silver ass-whooping, albeit in a way more badass way.
Chaos control!
Then at the end of the game, he goes super alongside Sonic and Silver and helps destroy Iblis in all timelines. This one's a pretty simple Elite, but after this game, Shadow takes a bit of a step back. He's not in Sonic Unleashed, Colors, or Sonic 4, but he finally makes a return in 2011 with Sonic Generations, and he's nowhere near as useful as he's been in every other game up until this point. He's not just another one of Sonic's friends at the birthday party, which is good.
Oh, by the way, when it's time for Xbox 360 games, I will be playing that first. So that way when we get Sonic X Shadow Generations, I don't need to play Sonic Generations again because of the changes. So I'll be focusing on Shadow's story, and then for the Xbox, I'm going to be doing a Sonic Generations, and then Sonic X Shadow Generations will be just Shadow Generations. So yeah.
He only appears in Final Rush for a quick boss fight. Now, he's still running toe-to-toe with Sonic and is a more than effective rival, but he doesn't do anything to help the plot of this game. He makes a one-off cameo, basically, and is gone after that, so he gets decently capable tier. As for Sonic X Shadow Generations, I can't really say definitively until the game comes out.
Well, it's out.
Summer Game Fest this weekend, they dropped some massive new footage, and it's looking like it's going to be another easy Elite. I got to be there and caught the audience's live reaction to the update, so check out my video via that card. And stay tuned to this channel for some exclusive insights on the game coming later this week. I may or may not be trying it out in the next couple days. If it's out already, I'll have it as another card and in the end screen. He gone in Sonic Lost World, but in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, he returns as another boss. He shows up randomly in the middle of the game and calls Sonic weak because of his loyalty to his friends. Clearly the writers have never played a Sonic the Hedgehog game. This dude's obsessed with honoring his old friend Maria, and is shown time and time again to care a lot about his newer pals too. Now, the boss is pretty cool with all the arena changes, but it's not very innovative or unique gameplay-wise, and it's a pretty forgettable fight. He's getting his lowest ranking yet. Barely does anything. he's not in Sonic Mania, but in Sonic Forces, he returns as a villain alongside Chaos Zero, Zavok, and Metal Sonic. But that's not the real Shadow? Yeah, he fights alongside Sonic in this game, despite the illusions early on. And in a free update they added called Episode Shadow, you can play as the Edgelord himself in every modern Sonic stage. It's more of a fan service than anything, because he's basically just a skin for Sonic, but it was still cool to see a character besides Sonic get to be playable for the first time since 06. We'll toss him in decently capable, and he's not in Sonic Frontiers or Sonic Superstars, so there you have it. Real quick, if you...
Alright, that's another one gone. We're speed running through all of this.
Before discovering...
Alright, I think this is the next one. Alright, let me see. Hold on a second. Let's see. Yep, this one's next.
Amy Rose, everyone's favorite obsessive pink fangirl. Sometimes she's a more than capable independent hero, and other times she makes things a hell of a lot harder. Today, we're going to look at Amy's character in every mainline Sonic game and rank her from worthless to elite. Her first appearance is in Sonic CD, so she gone in Sonic 1. And in her debut, she's pretty freaking useless. She gets kidnapped by Metal Sonic early in the game and serves as basically the damsel in distress that Sonic reluctantly saves at the game. Kinda hard to argue with this one. Worthless. Sonic CD is the only classic Sonic game with any trace of Amy, so she gone in Sonic 2, Sonic 3D Knuckles, and Sonic 3D Blast. But Sonic Adventure gives her one of her most prominent roles to date. Not only does she have her own story mode with her own unique gameplay style, but she also grows a ton as a character throughout the events of the game. It starts off with her being, once again, very reliant on Sonic, saying she misses having him around and that life just isn't as fun without him. I guess near-death experiences and getting kidnapped aren't that traumatizing? I don't know, but then this little bird falls into her lap and gives her the chance to be the hero to someone. At first she looks to Sonic to help her, but he's busy, saving the world, so Amy has to protect it all by herself. This giant robot dude is chasing after the bird, and her gameplay revolves around running away from it. But she eventually lets her guard down, gets caught, and reverts to calling for Sonic's help. But when she's locked up and there's no one around to save her or the bird, she sticks up for her friend and puts her own life at risk to protect someone else. It actively demonstrates her deeply caring personality, and that's the very thing that convinces a stone-cold robot to have a change of heart and let them go. But yeah, then she runs into Sonic again and needs his help. But this time it triggers something inside of her. She realizes that she's too reliant on Sonic and needs to be more independent. And when she sees the opportunity to act on this by helping that bird find its family by herself, she doesn't hesitate. She storms right into Eggman's base with nobody's help and actually succeeds in finding the other birds. Then that happens, and it forces her to finally face off against the thing she's been running away from the entire game for one final battle. And of course, she wins. Just like Tails in this game, she proves she doesn't need Sonic and can be a hero all by herself, which makes her pretty darn elite in my book. Sonic Adventure 2 puts her on the back burner when compared to last time, but she still has some pretty big moments. When Sonic's caught by the military and locked up in Metal Harbor, who breaks him out of jail? Amy. And at the end of the game, when Shadow's about to decimate the Earth, she convinces him to find the good in humanity, and it triggers a pivotal flashback about Maria that, oh, maybe she didn't want everyone to die. It shows Amy, yet again, to be a very compassionate and persuasive character that can find the good in anything and anyone, no matter how heartless and cold. Also, she is playable in multiplayer, so that helps her case a little too, and I think it's enough to give her another elite tier. She's playable all throughout the Sonic Advance trilogy, and she's alright. She's a lot slower and can't roll into a ball, but her hammer swing is pretty effective. Still, not my first or second choice, and when you actually unlock her, varies a good bit from game to game. In the first one, she's playable from the start, so she'll get sidekick tier. In the second, it's only after you beat the game, so barely does anything. And in the third, it's about halfway through, so we'll put her right in the middle. In Sonic Heroes, she leads Team Rose as the speed archetype, and is just as useful as any other character in the game. Now, this portrayal of Amy's character sucks, making her obsession with Sonic toxic as all f***. with her even fighting Team Sonic to make him marry her. But she's still a good friend to Big and Cream, and we'll give her sidekick tier, although she's very poorly written.
Look what I've just made.
No, we don't want this. Bruh. Nope, I gotta fix that. Of course. I'm not surprised.
10,000.
No. Absolutely not.
She's the same as every other side character in Shadow the Hedgehog. In certain story paths, she'll help Shadow through a level and is basically gone after that. Barely does anything. Sonic Rush keeps her character flaws from Heroes, but takes away just about everything redeeming about her. She's not playable, and only shows up in the occasional cutscene looking for Sonic, thinking about Sonic, or assaulting Sonic, so absolutely worthless. For as much as people hate this game, it's actually a positive step forward for Amy's character. She mistakes another Hedgehog for Sonic, like usual, but she also agrees to help Silver find the person he's looking for, the Iblis Trigger, only to find out it was the same person she was looking for. Well, what do you fucking know? When Silver fights Sonic to stop him from destroying his world, he kicks his ass. And right when he's about to finish him off, Amy jumps in front of Sonic and tries to rationalize with Silver, giving Sonic just enough time to get away. This is another perfect example of her willingness to put her own safety on the line to stay loyal to those she cares about. And if it weren't for her, Sonic would have died and the world would have been destroyed. So I think she earns an elite tier. Also, she is playable in a section of Dusty Desert in Silver's story, and she's pretty bad, not gonna lie, but still, it shows she's very capable here. She's absent from Sonic Rush Adventure, but in Sonic Unleashed, she does play a very minor role. She's not portrayed as an annoying fangirl, so that's good, but she's still kinda helpless. She makes Werehog Sonic feel all bad about himself, listens to some Professor Pickle yap sessions, and cries for Sonic's help when some hypnotized locals start dancing with her. Yeah, not a very good look for her. Just like Knuckles, she gone in Sonic Colors and Sonic 4 Episodes 1 and 2, but Sonic Generations brings her back as basically a cheerleader. She annoys the fuck out of him to the point where he has to stiff arm her face away, and while her schmack Knuckles into a tree was pretty fun.
What do it?
It goes against everything that once made her character so great, even just a couple games back in 06. She's supposed to be the thoughtful one, that yes, has a crush on Sonic, but also puts the well-being of her friends above her own. And unnecessarily hitting Knuckles just feels wrong for her. Worthless. This game's basically the same thing. She's a background character that calls Sonic a couple times throughout the game and pretty much tells him that, yeah, hey, the world's getting destroyed, can you please help? But she doesn't do anything herself, so... Sonic Boom's portrayal of Amy is actually a lot better than most of these modern games. She still likes Sonic, but she's actually a character outside of that and can interact with the rest of the crew without it needing to be about Sonic. And in Rise of Lyric, she's a playable character alongside Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. And she's not really better or worse than the other three, so she'll chill in sidekick tier. In true classic Sonic form, Amy isn't playable, and she doesn't even appear in the game. Sonic Forces sucks, and Amy just doesn't do anything in the game. She's part of the Resistance, and is seen taking out some enemies in the big battle scene, so she barely does anything. And hey, that's more than we can say for Tails in this game, right? I'm including Sonic Origins this time around because it actually makes a big difference to her rating. In the Plus edition of the game, she's playable in all 4 classic Sonic games, giving her the chance to redeem her uselessness in those original titles, and making a hell of a strong case for another elite tier. This game handles her character really well. She's not super clingy and obsessive like a lot of her other modern portrayals, and while she does need saving from the cyberspace thingy, so do Tails and Knuckles, so she contributes just as much as they do. Honestly, she's pretty chill in this game, and Sonic kinda admits to have small feelings for her, in a very indirect and Sonic type of way, but still, it shows she's not just a nuisance to him anymore. Also, in the final DLC update, she was added as a playable character, which is really cool to see, and I think it earns her a very strong capable tier. Similar to Sonic Advance 1, Sonic Superstars makes Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy playable from the start. But where that game makes her the worst playable character of the bunch, this one makes her one of the best. For starters, she can spin dash like everybody else, which was probably her biggest flaw in Advance. But unique to her is a double jump, which is pretty freaking OP, and makes her an easy elite. And there you have it. Real quick, if you take your Nintendo Switch on the go a lot and wish it was easier to lug around, you gotta ditch that clunk.
Nope. We ain't doing that, bruh. We ain't not doing that.
Knuckles, everyone's favorite muscular echidna warrior. Sometimes he's portrayed as a strong, noble force to be reckoned with, and other times he's a straight-up dumbass. Today, we're going to look at Knuckles' character in every mainline Sonic game and rank him from worthless to elite. His debut isn't until Sonic 3, so he gone in 1, 2, and CD, but I'm grouping 3 with Sonic and Knuckles this time because it's how the game's intended to be played. This one's tricky because he's peak capable, but for most of the game, he's working for the wrong side. After Angel Island gets attacked, Knuckles encounters Eggman and he convinces him he's the good guy, and that Sonic and Tails are trying to steal the Master Emerald. So throughout the game, he's a pretty big thorn in the ass, but that doesn't mean he's necessarily useless. In fact, he's quite useful to Eggman, but after he realizes he was fighting for the wrong side, he helps Sonic and Tails reach Eggman's ship, but is too exhausted after that to do much else. Because of all of that, he gets manipulated but strong tier, which I made specifically for cases where he's useful, but in the wrong way. In Sonic 3D Blast, he acts the same as Tails. He's hidden in different levels and takes you to special stages to collect the Chaos Emeralds. Barely does anything. Sonic Adventure kicks off similarly to Sonic 3, with Knuckles looking to protect the Master Emerald, Eggman telling him that Sonic's trying to steal it, the two fighting, Eggman getting what he wants, and leaving Sonic and Knuckles pissed off and working together. This time though, they join the same side much earlier in the game. Still though, it's almost the exact same setup and Knuckles falls for it twice. I mean, fool me once, but this time it just makes him look stupid. But even when he does team up with Sonic, he doesn't do much. He's mostly on a side quest trying to restore the Master Emerald and lets Sonic do the whole saving the world thing by himself. We'll put him in manipulated but strong, because he's the whole reason Eggman got his hands on 2 of the emeralds, and he doesn't help stop him, but he's competent and does achieve his main goal of restoring the emerald, so I'll give him some credit. This is the first game where Knuckles plays a prominent role, and it's not helping Eggman at all. Him and Rouge have a standoff over who gets the Master Emerald, and when Eggman tries to snatch it while they're distracted, Knuckles breaks it into a million pieces and has to scour the earth and space to find them all. He did create the problem in the first place, but the Master Emerald is the only thing with the power to counteract that of all 7 Chaos Emeralds, so it's kind of vital Eggman didn't steal it, so I can justify his decision to smash it. However, when he does use it at the end of the game, it's in vain, because the actual Ultimate Life Form takes control of the space colony and keeps it on its collision course. Still though, he played a pretty big role and stepped up when he needed to, and I think that earns him an elite tier. I'm grouping all 3 advanced games together because his role is similar throughout the trilogy, but unlike Tails, who's unlocked pretty early on, Knuckles is more of a mid-game acquisition, and that'll dock him a little. Once unlocked though, you can go back and play any level you want with him, so he's fully capable, but not a full contributor, so I can't put him any higher than sidekick tier. Sonic Heroes makes characters playable in 3s. Sonic's the speedster, Tails can fly, and Knuckles is the brute, so... This game has a billion different story routes and endings, and some runs completely omit Knuckles. When he is there, though, he doesn't do much. He follows Shadow through a level or 2 and can be controlled by a second player. Not useless, but he barely does anything. Sonic Rush doesn't feature him much, but he is present in a couple cutscenes, where he's portrayed as pretty freaking useless. When he first meets Blaze and she's holding something shiny, he accuses her of stealing the Chaos Emeralds and gets mad, but when Blaze gets fed up with him, she crushes him under a pile of rocks like it's nothing. Then later on, when Sonic and Tails find him and he gets out, he's a pissed off hothead that smashes the pile of rocks and runs off. Honestly, he's borderline worthless, but clearing the rock pile did open a path to progress in the game, so he'll get barely does anything. This game really solidifies that moron reputation they gave Knuckles for the better part of a decade. When we first see him, he tosses this hologram thing to Sonic in the most unnecessarily cool way possible. And when Sonic gives it back, he fumbles it around and drops it. That's a weird detail for them to add. But looking beyond that, he does travel with Sonic and Tails through most of the story and is full-on playable in a section of Flame Core. Now, his gameplay is straight up booty cheeks, but he does help out a good bit, and I'll give him the bronze tier. Maybe I'm being too nice. After Sonic 06, Knuckles fell into a bit of a hiatus. He's nowhere to be seen in Sonic Rush Adventure, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, or Sonic 4 Episodes 1 and 2. I guess he was off protecting the Master Emerald or trying to rizz up Rouge. And it's not until Sonic Generations when he makes another appearance. And spoiler alert, it's not a very good one. He attends Sonic's birthday party, gets sucked away by the Time Monster, and needs Sonic to save him, after which he insults him and does jack shit. Then at the end of the game, when they resume the celebration, he goes for another dig at Sonic, and Amy's just not having it, and full-on Will Smiths his ass. Knuckles is a straight-up bitch in this game. Worthless. Sonic Lost World once again makes Knuckles kinda helpless. He throws all these petty insults at Sonic, like, oh, I would've done it quicker, or that's all you can do? Weak. And it's like, I get it, because they were once rivals, but him saying that type of shit in a game where he does nothing just annoys me. He's an incompetent goofball that Amy and these little animals do what they want with, once again making him absolutely worthless. Sonic Boom completely rebranded the Sonic series and gave the characters much more streamlined personalities, but no one was more flanderized than Knuckles. He's modern Patrick Star, an airhead that's really strong, and in the show he has some pretty funny moments, but we're talking about the atrocity that is Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, where he's actually pretty useful again. He's fully playable alongside Sonic, Tails, and Amy, and he's without question the most broken character in the game, figuratively and literally. When you pause the game during his mid-air special, you can unpause, use it again, and essentially just infinite jump. This completely breaks the game, but gives him shaggy levels of power, so elite! This game brings Knuckles back to his Sonic 3 and Knuckles form, making him fully playable throughout the game and giving him a ton of unique routes that take advantage of his gliding and climbing abilities. But this time around, he's not tricked by Eggman and is helping Sonic throughout the entire game, making the easiest elite tiers of the video. Sonic Forces is a bad game. It is, and while Knuckles isn't playable here, he actually uses his knowledge of combat and battle to form the resistance everyone fights in. He's the brains of their operation, and he leads the charge in the massive battle at the end of the game. So even if you can't play as him, he earns a spot at least up in the bronze tier. This time around, Knuckles' role is once again about the same as Tails'. He's turned into a digital form and locked up, Sonic has to rescue him, he follows Sonic around for a bit and helps now and again, and after the game's beat, you can play as him. That was only added in the latest and final DLC update last December, and since that's only after the world is saved, it doesn't bring the ranking up much. He gets manipulated but strong, because it's a mid-tier, and I guess he is manipulated by the cyberspace thing, so close enough. And last but certainly not least, we have Sonic Superstars, which makes Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Knuckles fully playable from start to finish. He's a slower character, but his gliding and climbing are super fun to use, and make exploring these areas a cakewalk, giving him one last elite tier. And there you have it. Real quick, if you take... Miles Tails Prower, everyone's favorite lovable two-tailed sidekick. Sometimes his genius plays a crucial part in saving the day, and other times he actively makes things worse and just gets in the way. Today, we're going to look at Tails' character in every mainline Sonic game and rank him from worthless to elite. He's not in the original Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic CD, so let's start with his inception, Sonic 2, where he has a pretty strong debut. In single player, he follows Sonic through the entire game, and in co-op, player 2 gets to use him. He plays the exact same as Sonic, but with a smaller hitbox, so if he's able to maneuver all the same obstacles and keep up with the fastest thing alive, I'd say he's pretty darn useful. We'll put him in sidekick tier because he's not playable by himself, but he's borderline elite. Sonic 3 gives Tails the role of follower like the last game, but it adds the ability to fly solo with him throughout the entire campaign, and his trademark flight ability is absolutely broken. Also, in two-player, he can lift Sonic and guide him through the air, easily making this our first elite tier. In Sonic and Knuckles, you can only play as Sonic or Knuckles. Shocker, I know, but that means no Tails whatsoever. He gone. Oh no. I'm not sure if this game's considered mainline, but Tails does make cameos throughout the game and transport us to special stages to collect Chaos Emeralds, so barely does anything. Sonic Adventure is a game where Tails evolves from being dependent on Sonic to proving himself as an equally capable hero. In the beginning of the game, he crashes his plane on the shores of Emerald Coast, and Sonic has to go give him a hand. Then throughout the action stages, he follows Sonic through each area, and in his story mode, we see him race Sonic to each goal and actually come out on top in every single level. That's a hell of a good sidekick if you ask me. But at the end of the game, Sonic's off fighting Eggman by himself, and Tails is left all alone to save Station Square. His training wheels are off, and he has to overcome this obstacle without Sonic's help, and he crushes it. Watching his journey of self-discovery unfold in this game is peak Tails, and it definitely deserves a spot in Elite. Sonic Adventure 2 is a tough one, because he's once again playable and has a big part in the progression of the story, but there's two things really hurting his case. First off, he's in a mech this time, so gone are his OP helicopter tails. Instead, he controls this super clunky robot that's just really not fun to play as. I'd still consider it a solid sidekick tier, though, if it weren't for him blowing the entire operation at the end of the game. This is one of the most iconic cutscenes in Sonic history. If you don't know what I'm talking about and are still avoiding spoilers for a 20-year-old game, skip to the timestamp on screen. But basically, they try to trick Eggman with a decoy Chaos Emerald, and when Sonic goes to give it to him and gets captured, Eggman bluffs and Tails absolutely sells.
You thought you could trick me with that thing.
So, how did you know it wasn't the real one? Tails!
Because you just told me once, boy.
Now, it doesn't seem fitting because he got outsmarted, but he gets the brains tier for this one, because all the plans were his idea, and he does contribute, but he's a bit too much of a liability in this game. I'm grouping this trilogy all together because his character's handled the same in all three games. He's playable super early on or from the start, and is just as good as the other characters, so a nice and easy... This game introduces an entirely different gameplay style to the series, where you play as three characters at once and switch between them to solve puzzles and progress in the stage. Team Sonic consists of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and he's not really better or worse than the other guys, so he gets sidekick tier. All three of them would. The answer for this game is entirely dependent on which story path you take. Sometimes he doesn't play any role, but when he does appear, he doesn't do a whole lot. He'll follow Shadow through a stage, and if a second controller's connected, a player 2 can play as him. But again, he's not a very unique character, and is only in the game for a very brief moment.
Damn.
Releasing the exact same day as Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic Rush is similarly lacking in the miles per hour department. Except this time, he's not playable at all, and he mostly just yaps in cutscenes, so pretty freaking worthless. The most notorious game in the Sonic series does in fact feature Tails as playable. He doesn't have his own story mode or anything, but in Sonic's, he steps in now and again to help out. His flying works okay, about as well as it could in a broken game, and his only attack being this super slow bomb throw flat out sucks. But still, he's playable and is a pretty useful sidekick. In Sonic Rush Adventure, he travels with some useful to the player, but his brains do get them out of a bad situation. He doesn't contribute much in this game, but he does carry Sonic and Chip from continent to continent in the tornado, and introduces them to Professor Pickle, who tells him how to revert the whole werehog thing and restore Earth. It's not a very prominent role, but he does something, so he gets a high barely does anything. Similar to Unleashed, he's right there with Sonic for the entire story, but here we actually see more of him. He develops a gadget to communicate with the Wisps and to figure out what Eggman's up to, which is pretty freaking useful and would take some brains, so... This game once again keeps Tails on the back burner. Sonic rescues him and his past self, and they just stand around in the hub world after that. Now, he does help out in the occasional side mission, but those aren't necessary at all, so we've got another worthless. Sonic 4 Episode 1 doesn't feature Tails in any way, shape, or form, but Episode 2 brings him back to his classic glory. He's playable in multiplayer and runs alongside Sonic during single player, occasionally lifting him up to new routes and attacking enemies, so solid sidekick tier. Sonic Lost World is the worst portrayal of Tails out of any Sonic media. He's smart, but he finds the need to brag about it at every f***ing turn. And he gets, really jealous of Eggman throughout the story, which is so unjustified, it makes it impossible to sympathize with him. And then when he's kidnapped halfway in, I was low-key kinda happy. Now, he does help Sonic quite a bit, sacrificing himself to the trap Sonic almost fell into, rescuing himself from captivity, and fixing up his plane, so he's not entirely useless, just really unlikable, and it doesn't really fit the character we've grown to love. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't played this one, because I've heard just terrible things about it, but I do know Tails is playable and is a vital part of the team, so... And no, I'm not gonna count the handheld Sonic Boom games, same deal. Finally, another true classic Sonic game, and Tails returns to the playable roster, both alongside Sonic and by himself in single player. He can fly like usual to uncover new paths and damage enemies with his tails, so he's basically the same as he was in Sonic 3. Therefore... I hate this game, man, and there's a million reasons why, but Tails' character is near the top of that list, where...
5 Mountain Dew to...
Adventure gives him a good arc overcoming his dependence. He slowly got less and less so in these modern games, and here he's even more useless than Lost World. He's part of the quote-unquote resistance, but he really doesn't do much resisting. When Eggman attacks a group of civilians, he cowers down just like the rest of them, and needs his buddy to bail him out. And when he does, he just hides behind some rubble and watches Sonic get his ass beat. But that's not even his worst moment. When he's by himself trying to fix up E-102 Gamma and Chaos Zero shows up to attack him,
Sonic, help me!
he bends over, cowering, and begs for Sonic's help. And right when his ass about to get yoinked, classic Sonic shows up to save him. This takes his dependence to an all-new high, and his usefulness to an all-time low. Worthless. This time around, a digital version of Tails comes with us through basically the entire story, providing advice, explaining all these ancient technologies, and tracking down the Chaos Emeralds. So he's textbook brains tier. However, the most recent update adds him as a playable character alongside Amy and Knuckles, and he's a ton of fun to play as. But since you only unlock him after beating the main game, it doesn't help his case at all. And finally, Sonic's latest 2D adventure features Knuckles, Amy, and Tails as playable characters throughout the entire main game, and Tails' flight ability and good speed stats make him one of my favorite choices, so he earns another elite tier. And there you have it. Real quick, if you take your Nintendo Switch...
Alright, one more to go. We're almost gone. We're not gone, sorry. We're almost done. One more to go. Let's see, where is it? Now everyone's favorite.
Sonic the Hedgehog, everyone's favorite speedy, cocky little blue rodent. Sometimes the fate of the world's at stake and he 100% delivers, and other times he relies on his friends a bit too much or just does something stupid to make things worse. Today, we're going to look at Sonic's character in every mainline Sonic the Hedgehog game and rank him from worthless to elite. In the Hedgehog's debut, he plays a pretty standard protagonist role. There's not much story or context given, Sonic's just running around super fast and saving tiny animals from the clutches of the evil Dr. Robotnik. He succeeds, doesn't fuck anything up, and sets up a great foundation for his character, but compared to some later portrayals, it's nothing spectacular, so he'll go typical. Sonic 2 ups just about everything from that first game. Faster levels, brighter environments, more characters, more emeralds, and a new form for our blue blur, Super Sonic. You can only use it when you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, but it makes Sonic feel OP as hell. Now, Tails does travel with him, but he's not dependent on him for anything. Sonic's a role model to him, and Tails desperately wants to tag along. This game really refined Sonic into the badass he was seen as in the 90s, and I'm going to be generous and push him up to elite for it. I don't know what to do with this one, because Sonic's able to time travel, which is super useful, but everything depends on whether or not you get the good or bad ending. Some futures are destroyed by Eggman, and others flourish in his absence. It all boils down to how well the player plays the game. It makes him tough to rank, but him having so much control over the fate of the world makes me have to put him at least up in typical hero. I'm grouping Sonic 3 with Sonic and Knuckles again because it's the definitive version and gives us the best look at the complete narrative. Eggman's trying to relaunch the Death Egg and tricks Knuckles the Echidna into helping him steal the Master Emerald. Instead of an overweight roboticist being his main competitor, here it's another anthropomorphic creature with powers that very much rival his. And when partnered with Eggman, the odds are really stacked against him throughout this one. Once Knuckles changes sides though, it's basically over. Sonic rips through the Death Egg and goes super to defeat Eggman. But if you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds and convert those to Super Emeralds, you can unlock Hyper Sonic for the only time in the series. He's even faster than Super Sonic and can breathe underwater, making this the strongest form of Sonic we've seen to date. That alone makes this a really straightforward elite. In Sonic's fake 3D game, he's not doing anything too crazy. This new gameplay style makes him feel a lot slower and less agile than the classic games, which makes playing as him not feel nearly as satisfying. Plot-wise though, it's basically Sonic 1. Eggman's after the Emeralds and Sonic tries to save a bunch of flickies and stop the Doctor. The mediocre gameplay makes me want to lower him a bit, but he is effective in his goal and is a one-man wrecking crew, so I'll give it to him. Typical. Sonic Adventure is an excellent transition to 3D for the Sonic series. It carries over the level design philosophies, his moveset, and adds a couple of new moves to make navigating this 3D space easier. He plays great, but his plot significance is watered down by the inclusion of a bunch of other characters. And that's not a bad thing, but it is for Sonic's role. Now, he's just one of 6 playable characters. And sure, his story is still the main event, but when you play through Tails' story, you see him beat Sonic to the end of every single stage. For the fastest thing alive, you'd expect him to easily outrun his pal, but he doesn't. And toward the end of the game, when Sonic defeats the Egg Viper and sends Eggman plummeting toward Station Square, he's off doing something else. And in a last-ditch effort, Eggman sends a missile at Station Square to blow it to bits. And the only one around that can do anything about it is Tails. So all by himself, he beats Eggman to the explosive and defeats him, which is a big moment for him, but makes Sonic out to be super careless and not having the situation under control at all. But when Perfect Chaos takes its full form, Sonic goes super and is the only one that stands a chance against that thing. That moment is pretty elite. But with the big focus on other characters and him failing to stop an Eggman missile, I've got to knock him down a typical hero. This game introduces a new character whose abilities contend with that of Sonic's, Shadow the Hedgehog. And throughout the game, Shadow is shown to be a lot stronger and more skilled than Sonic. When they first meet, he puts his speed to shame using Chaos Control and gets Sonic thrown in jail. If it weren't for Tails and somehow Amy, he probably wouldn't have gotten out, and the island would have exploded with him on it. He's kind of dependent on all his friends throughout the game. He needs Knuckles to break into Eggman's base, and he needs Tails to devise plans for him. Now, miraculously learning Chaos Control at the end was pretty damn cool, especially when he didn't even have an actual Chaos Emerald. How the f*** did he do that? I don't know. But he proves that he can be just as strong as Shadow, and the boss battle that follows only further solidifies that. But then for the epic final battle against the Bio Lizard, Sonic takes a backseat and lets Shadow handle the first phase. Then when the Bio Lizard takes over the space colony and sends it straight at Earth, he goes super alongside Shadow, which is a really badass moment, but since there's 2 of them, he's only doing half the work. I don't know, it's tough, because he really grows a lot as a character throughout the game and learns some sick moves, but he really relies on his pals, and Shadow does most of the work in actually saving the day. This game also features some of his most fun levels in the series, but these rankings are about how useful he is compared to his other games. And because of that, I gotta put this one in Sidekick tier. I love you, Sonic Adventure 2. I'm sorry. I'm grouping this trilogy together again because his role is super consistent throughout. In Sonic Advance 1 and 3, you can choose from at least Sonic or Tails right from the get-go. Sonic Advance 2 is the only exception, but after beating just the first level, you unlock Cream the Rabbit. So he kickstarts the game, but like the others, is just a selectable character from that point on. He's definitely useful, but not more so than his pals, so he's one with the sidekicks. Sonic Heroes introduced a new team mechanic to the series, where characters travel in threes and fall under a speed, flight, or power archetype. Sonic's, of course, the speed guy, and he travels with Tails and Knuckles. However, power and flight are definitely the more useful abilities, because all 3 of these guys move fast as hell, but he's still a decently equal contributor, and nothing more. Sidekick. The main character in this one is pretty self-explanatory, but Sonic does make an appearance as a side character that sometimes travels with Shadow through a level and can be played as with a second controller. This game has a whole bunch of story routes that change the way things play out. If Shadow helps the heroes, Sonic can go defeat Black Doom, but if Shadow helps him, Sonic can't do a thing to stop it. This is about as helpless to a situation as we'll ever see Sonic, so I'll take the opportunity to give him his very first worthless. Sonic Rush features the new character Blaze, whose dimension is being merged with Sonic's by some evil plan from the 2 Eggmen. Her and Sonic are pretty comparable forces, but they don't really trust each other at first, so the 2 fight it out, and Sonic whoops her ass. Sonic collects the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and when Eggman drains the Soul Emeralds, he's able to show Blaze the meaning of friendship, which restores the Soul Emeralds. I don't know. They use their magic jewels to turn into Super Sonic and Burning Blaze and defeat the Egg Salamander. Sonic's the strongest character across both of these dimensions, and his gameplay introduces the boost mechanic, which makes him feel wicked powerful. I think that's enough to push him up to an elite tier. For a game named after the guy, Sonic doesn't play a very vital role. This plot is confusing as all f***, but Sonic's distracted by Elise for most of the game. While Silver's trying to avenge his fallen society, and Shadow's trying to figure out the sinister undertones of Eggman's plan, Sonic's trying to get some poon. He still crosses paths with the rest of the crew a lot, and contributes quite a bit then, but in the climax of the game, Mephiles kills Sonic and makes Elise cry, which releases Iblis and sends the world into disaster. He actually dies, and it takes the effort of every other character and a miracle to bring him back. But alongside Super Shadow and Super Silver, they save the day. So instead of needing one other guy's help, he needs 2. I gotta put this down and barely wins. He gets killed, it's done, and the bravery of his friends is the only reason he comes back. It's debatably worthless, but at least he does something. Like the first Sonic Rush, Adventure brings back the boost style and plays the cat, but this time the story is way more focused on the two of them working together. They seem way more like equals here, and all the cool vehicles that Tails and Marine are making take even more focus away from Sonic himself, and shoehorn in all these other gameplay styles. This game's more centered on exploration than pure speed like the first one, and given how prominent so many other characters are, he feels more like a sidekick if I'm being honest. This opening cinematic is straight up beautiful. Watching Sonic and Eggman duke it out in space is so satisfying and smooth. Eggman has so many robots and weapons firing off all at once, and Sonic looks absolutely unfazed by it all. But he gets a bit too cocky, lets his guard down, and Eggman makes him pay for it. He decimates the planet, turns Sonic into his werehog form, and sends him back toward the surface. From there, he goes on a globe-trotting adventure with his new buddy Chip, and this game demotes the rest of Sonic's pals to either background characters or just completely omits them. Instead, it's daytime stages that feature that boost formula in 3D for the first time, which are adrenaline rushes through and through, and nighttime stages, where stretchy arm werehog Sonic beats up waves upon waves upon waves of enemies. He gets all the emeralds, puts the planet back in one piece, defeats the Egg Dragoon, and faces off against Dark Gaia as Super Sonic. He goes super all by himself again, and faces off against one of his most menacing-looking foes to date. And that, with being the only playable character in two different forms with their own distinct strengths, makes this an easy elite. Both episodes of Sonic 4 feature a pretty vanilla retelling of the original Sonic games. Eggman's back to stealing emeralds, building up a Death Egg, and Sonic's back to saving Flickies and stopping him with the help of Tails. Not really much else to say about these. Standard as shit. And that's a decent portrayal of Sonic. Typical. Eggman builds a theme park up in space where he's secretly making little aliens as slaves. Alright then. Sonic doesn't know this right away and just checks out the park for a good time. But he beats some levels, Eggman's intentions become more and more clear, and he stops him to save the day. This game has a super silly tone, and Sonic tries to crack cringy jokes in almost every cutscene.
Baldy nose hair! That's the best thing I've heard all day! Shut up!
It's hard to watch, but he's pretty average overall, and the Wisp transformations bring a slew of
I'm gonna do it. You know, I always do it at least once.
intentions become more and more clear, and he stops him to save the day. This game has a super silly tone, and Sonic tries to crack cringy jokes in almost every cutscene.
Baldy nose hair! That's the best thing I heard all day!
It's hard to watch, but he's pretty average overall, and the Wisp transformations bring a slew of new abilities to Sonic's arsenal. But since they're temporary and dependent on power from another creature, I'm not really gonna raise his rank. This game brings back a ton of Sonic's friends for the first time in a while, but they don't do anything. The Time Meter shows up and sucks everybody into a void, leaving just Sonic to go around and rescue them. And even once they're saved, they just stand around in the hub world. The only other character that does anything is his classic form, which is playable in these not very good 2D levels. Having two playable Sonics, though, was f***ing awesome when it came out, and makes this a clear-cut elite. This portrayal of Sonic's character isn't great. It takes his awful humor from Colors and just does it again, unapologetically. Eggman's controlling the Zeddy with some kind of magic conch, and Sonic destroys it because, well, Eggman's the fucking bad guy and it would make sense to take away his minions. Instead, he's made out to be an idiot because he didn't know the creatures were hostile and able to mind control Eggman's badniks themselves. Well, sorry. Tails tried to warn him, but maybe speak up a little bit and don't be so fucking indecisive and hesitant with your tone. Maybe he would have listened. They end up teaming up with Eggman. Tails is super pissed off at Sonic. Then he high roads Tails when he does something stupid, and Tails is sad. But then Sonic f***s up again and falls for a trap, and Tails sacrifices himself to save him. I was too slow to save my buddy. Yeah, kind of a terrible look, but it gets worse somehow. Because when a bridge him and Eggman are standing on collapses, Eggman grabs the ledge, catches Sonic, and tosses him to safety, before losing his own grip and falling to his death. Sonic should have died on multiple occasions, but was saved by Tails and his archenemy, and they pulled off the upset somehow. I want to put this one in worthless so bad, because there's 3 really awful mistakes, but he does save the day in the end, so barely wins. This is the only Sonic Boom game I'll be talking about, because 1, it's the only one for home console, and 2, because what I'll say for this one applies to the rest pretty well. He travels with Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, and each character has unique attributes that are required to beat certain sections. They're all equally important, and while Sonic is generally seen as the leader, in terms of importance, he's the same as the quote-unquote sidekicks, so... This game is a true return to classic form for Sonic, and it makes Tails and Knuckles playable from the start of the game. Tails can fly, Knuckles can glide and climb, and Sonic has the drop dash, making them all feel really different and fun to play as, especially with select routes that only they can access. But for Sonic's ranking, since he's just as useful as his old sidekicks, he's going down there with him. I hate Sonic Forces. It tries to do the Sonic Generations thing again, but lacks an ounce of creativity in doing so. Modern Sonic gets the shit kicked out of him by Infinite to start the game, and is thrown in jail afterwards for a long enough time for Eggman to completely take over the world. So Sonic loses. He's in a jail cell handcuffed, and Eggman does what he wants. Meanwhile, classic Sonic shows up and saves Tails, then contributes a little, but the new customizable character is the one that breaks Sonic out. And even after that, Infinite continues to kick his ass. And in the big battle at the end of the game, Knuckles leads the forces, and the Wookiee is the one who stops the giant sun from crashing into the planet. And Sonic's helpless to the situation. He still sorta does his part, but he barely wins. Sonic Frontiers gives Mr. Needlemouse his most versatile moveset to date, with a skill tree for combat, the circle move that attacks and solves puzzles, and his usual at this point boost, and it's overall really smooth and tight to control it. He also takes the events of the game a lot more seriously. Instead of cracking corny jokes and sounding all high-pitched like Roger Craig Smith is known for, he sounds way more mellow and mature. His friends are all trapped in cyberspace, and it's up to him to rescue them and uncover the mysteries of the Starfall Islands. It feels like Sonic really grew up for this role, and his abilities are better than ever, so we've got another really strong elite tier on our hands. Sonic's latest 2D outing brings Tails, Knuckles, and Amy back to a playable role, and they're selectable in co-op and as single-player characters right from the get-go. So like I've done for all the other games that do this, he's going to be sidekick tier. And there you have it.
All right, that's it. The new one is done. The recap is done. Jeremy Klinger, keep making those Sonic ones, please, if you can. I love those very, very much. And I hope that my reactions to your videos are helping you with your channel growth. I gave you credit so I don't get in trouble. And yeah, so keep up the great work, man. All right. Now with that done, for videos, we got this coming out tomorrow. Then when that is done, for tomorrow's events, we got Dragon Ball Fighters, Ninja Turtles, and then Blank Boy. And then I'm currently working on these two. That's about it. Nothing new. So, I guess now it's this time again.
Mamacita.
No, not ads. That's not the time we want. No, we don't want this. All right, here we go. All right. All right, everybody, we've reached the end of the stream. If you guys have enjoyed it, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, click the bell, comment down below what was your favorite part. Help me and reach me my goal of 3K subscribers before 2024 is over. We are 10 subscribers away from that goal. Please make it happen by clicking that subscribe button, liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting below. Let me try it again. Liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting down below, clicking the bell, all that stuff. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great wonderful rest of your night. I love you all so, so much. Take care. And wait for it. Peace.